grew up in Lodz, Poland. Talk a little bit about your family before the war. How big was it and what was your life like?
The most beautiful part of my life was my childhood. I am one of 6 children. When the war broke out, the Germans, I don't have to tell you, they took over. I was 14 years old, in a mind of a 2-year-old, knew nothing about the outside world. And that made it very difficult for me further out in my life.
What was your childhood like? Was it relatively comfortable? Your dad did well?
Yeah, my grandfather was in export and import business. We had a beautiful summer estate that every summer my mother, I was the second oldest. And like I said, we were 6. And the youngest were twins, a boy and girl. So when school closed, we all went. The place is called Vishnova Gora, which is meaning cherry mountains. And my mother went over there with her maid and all that. And we were left till school closed. Then we went over there. And this was really, my life was wonderful. My father used to read to us a lot. It was just a beautiful, warm feeling.
You said to me at lunch the other day, someone asked you, were you rich as a child? And you said, I didn't know.
I don't know if I was rich. I never knew the meaning of a dollar. I never knew anything. I was absolutely ignorant of life and meaningful things in life. The only thing I know, we had a family and we loved us all. I had grandparents, my grandfather. My father was one of 12, so that's a big family. And we were one, like I said, of 6, and I can tell you about the sizes of the families were enormous. But this is how it was. But also, they had a way of treating you as a child. It didn't help me when I was on my own. Because, like I said, we were never at the conversation at the adult table. We were always at the kids' table. And so growing up, everything was fine because I didn't know better.
Were you religious? Were your parents religious?
No, but we were, I don't know. I couldn't even tell you.
Did you go to temple?
My mother had Sabbath and she lit the candles and we had, I think I don't know, you want to call it religious, that's fine. I have no name for it. Okay. Yeah, they were very observant and very nice people, if I have to say that.
So the war starts. What is the first recollection you have that something changed?
Everything. Because immediately schools were closed, you were restricted, they had curfews. That if they found you after the curfew, they didn't bother, they just shot you. Sometimes they would string you up, which I saw a lot of people hanging. And it's not a good feeling.
So the soldiers came into town?
The Germans? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
And you obviously noticed that. What was your dad's reaction to this?
Oh, he was a toughie. What I mean, he wouldn't take any nonsense from anyone. So when the war broke out, of course, like everybody else, the Germans would just come into your house, do what they wanted to, pulled people out to go to work. My father was one of them. I think they took him to some schools where he had to scrub toilets and bathtubs. I don't quite recall. And he was boiling inside, you could tell. And my mother was so frightened of him getting in trouble because he was a no-nonsense guy. He wouldn't take a lot, you know. So eventually, she insisted he leave town because she was so afraid that he stands up to a German, which I'm sure he would, and we all would go, you know.
Your mother had 6 children,
Yes.
infant twins, and there was a war on, and she told your father to go away.
Yeah. Well, she wanted to save it. No, say Yiddish Mama. What can I tell you? You understand what I'm saying.
And she assumed she'd see him again after the war.
Yeah.
So where did he go?
Well, the only safe place was run to Russia, where the borders were obviously open. Because on one side it was nothing but Nazis, and on the other side it was Russian. One difference was that you didn't afraid to be in Russia because what all went on, you never worried about being killed. But in Germany, it didn't take much to be killed. And so this way, a lot of people went to Russia. And my father was there too. And well, my mother got some news that he wound up in Brest-Litovsk, which it is a Russian-occupied area. It used to be Polish at one time, you know.
She knew where he went?
Well, as far as name, she knew, but nobody could ever visualize that.
You weren't exactly able to call him on the phone.
Oh, and guess what? Yeah, and we didn't have a television, so we didn't know the news.
So you were 14 when he left? You were 14?
I was 14 years of age.
And how long was he gone before you left?
I cannot really recall exactly. I know they didn't have a ghetto formed as yet.
So less than a year.
Yeah, I really don't know what month the ghetto in Lodz was formed. Now, the Lodz ghetto was one of the biggest they had. In everyone being pushed out their own environment, went to the Lodz ghetto. It was like, I don't know how you call it, dispensable. They would disperse the people to where they're supposed to go. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, some of them stayed, most of them, we don't have to tell you, they went on a ride, never to come back. As you know, Auschwitz was the destination. But who knew about that? Not that you could have changed it or stopped it.
So you're 14 or so. Your dad goes away. You're relatively immature. You don't know ways of the world. And you tell your mother something that I couldn't believe when I heard it the first time. I don't know if I'll believe it now, but you said you're leaving to go find your father.
Well, of course. I was a rebel. I hate to admit, but it didn't hurt me. It was okay.
What was your mom's reaction?
What was my mother's reaction?
When you said, I'm going?
She wanted me to be safe. She wanted me to see my father and tell him the conditions and whatnot. I don't know. It was just a horrible.
And you decided to leave with a couple cousins? You didn't travel alone, right?
No, I had a best girlfriend, Della. We had boyfriends, not the kind of boyfriends they have today. This was then. You know, life was so different. It's not even funny when you think back. And so we all just went on a journey. We're going to find my father. We knew he is in Brest-Litovsk. You could have as well said he was on the moon. What did we know? Nothing. No transportation, no communication. I just want to give you the general feeling of it. The only way you communicated is by sticking little slips of paper wherever you were. So-and-so is looking for so-and-so. And this was about as far as we went. But we walked. And I don't remember where. I know that I was riding on top of a train. I don't recall exactly the date, so I really don't.
But somehow you made your way from Lodz to...
And we all made it in trying to cross the Russian border. Well, that was another story. Because the Germans were on the train station in Warsaw. We went from Lodz to Warsaw. I don't know how many miles it was. I couldn't tell you. I don't remember.
Do you remember when you found him? What was his reaction?
Overwhelmed,
I'll
of
bet.
course, yeah. But then he was already settled and was employed by the Russians.
Was there any way when you got to him to let your mother know you'd made it?
Well, yeah, my mother knew that I found my father. Because, you could send letters, not that you were getting them, but I did. So she knew that I was with my father, and actually I was not with my father at all. I was just in this area.
You didn't live with him?
No, I did not. My father had a friend that he made that had a family of his own. His wife was pregnant for the second baby, and for whatever reason, they thought that's going to be a good place for me. Well, I don't know what I had to do. I don't remember. I was just there. I can't recall a lot of things, except I lived over there. And from there, I went to school, and I lived in this area 2 years I had of schooling, because, let's face it, when you were 14, life was over as far as school goes. But here, I went back into the groove of learning, and I have learned Russian, and it came very helpful for me in the future.
What languages did you speak?
I spoke a lot of languages, but I don't really recall a lot, and I'll tell you why. All because I lived in Louisiana. We have a lot of slang, just like New York. I think you have slang, maybe not, but Louisiana did. And to be a foreigner, I spoke 6 languages at one time, and I don't mean just spoke it, knew it, because I was taught how to do it. And in order to learn English, which I had no idea about English at all.
They asked you to renounce your Polish citizenship, didn't they?
Oh, well, later on, yeah, that was a different setup in a different situation. I was in Brest-Litovsk, and they wanted us. I was invited, I remember, to tea parties in Russia. They bring you a samovar, you know what that is, full of tea, and you sit and you drink it. And you wonder, where in the heck do you put it? And this was my experience with the Russian Tea Party. So we were in Bialystok, and of course it was under Russian jurisdiction. So they gave us a choice to become Russian citizens. Now, my family was in Poland. I'm not going to be a Russian, I'm Polish. Never mind Polish, but I'm from Poland. And my father too, and we refused to accept the citizenship. Though we enjoyed all the schooling that I got, we worked for it, It's not that we got it free as a gift. It wasn't so.
You said no, your dad said no. So what price did you pay for that?
Well, let me tell you, we were saved, and I'm here today. It sounds very funny, but when the Russians offered citizenship to us and we refused to do it, we were sort of on the blacklist, I suppose. I wasn't there, but this is how it probably was. Well, the war was going on in Europe, and there were pacts written between England and Poland, all kinds of jurisdictions, restrictions, and whatnot. And this would happen. So when we refused to become citizens, we didn't know what's going to happen. One day I'm coming home. I lived with my father's cousin, who he came to Russia with. in himself, and everything was surrounded. It was a little, not a village, I guess a community where we all lived. All of a sudden I says, what do I do? I looked, it was pitch dark. I was hidden in the bushes, afraid to either go out or not go out. What am I going to do? I don't know what was happening. I finally spotted my father in the darkness. And I thought, well, I have to show myself. And I did. And when I arrived, it seems in no time at all, we were all from that area put into trains and brought to a barge. I don't know exactly where it was, I cannot tell you. And off we went. So like I said, not being a Russian citizen and being thrown out of the country, so to speak, like trash, we survived because the Germans took over that area, and before you know, I don't have to tell you much about what they did to all the Jewish people over there. But I was in Siberia, and I was safe being there, just away from the Germans. So this is how it was. I can't tell you precise.
You told me, though, when you got to Siberia, you became a lumberjack.
Oh, I was a lumberjack once. You don't think they're going to feed you without anything. You had to pay back. So I guess this is how it was. I don't know for sure, but this is what it looks like.
You went to the forest and cut trees?
Well, what do you suppose?
I suppose you did.
Yes, and I surely did. Coming to Siberia was an experience in itself, because when we arrived, there was nothing but, I call it jungles. I was corrected by my sons telling me it's a forest. Okay, name it whatever you want. And there was no roadway, and they had a little hut. I think in the middle of, I call it jungle, still to me it was a jungle. And I know there are black bears all around us, I know that. And we were looking to shelter ourselves. There was no special provision given to us. So we had a tractor. I didn't, they did. And they showed us the way. They cut down the trees while we walked all the way to that little hut in the forest. And I don't know, we surely couldn't all get in. It was 2x4, and there was enough people. We survived the night, and I don't remember how. I really don't. I wished I had a clearer memory.
I think your memory's pretty clear. I think you're doing great. I'm curious, how many girls your age were there?
Quite a few. Yeah, because you know, the young people from different parts of Poland, because when I was over there, I realized that people come from all over Poland. Really, they were all caught into that little, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, circle of happenings. Yeah. And so they had quite a few, only I didn't know any of them. Everyone came from a different part.
And you were with your father this whole time?
Yeah, my father was dead. That doesn't mean I was with my father, not the way you put it. It's not like a daughter with his father being protected. Yeah. No, we were all in the same shoes. Anyway, we had a lot of young people. So when we finally, when we came, I don't quite recall how we got started and how they chose us to, work in the forest, chop the trees, put it on the river to float away.
You told me a story at lunch the other day about a baby that was in the forest with you and was sick.
Well, when you travel in all these areas, when I was in Brest-Litovsk still. There was a lady that reminded me a little bit of my mother, very gentle, very delicate. And she had a little baby with it that looked like my little brother. At least I thought he did. Well, anyway, I sort of was attached to that little boy. He looked like my brother or whatever. Well, the lady with the baby came to visit her brother to Brest-Litovsk from Bialystok, and for whatever reason, with the way they rounded up people, she was one of them too, though she didn't belong, and so she wound up in Siberia with us. Guess what happened?
That's how the baby...
And so, yeah. While in Siberia, I'm going to make this short because I think I'm talking too much. I went in Siberia. Like I told you, I had 2 years of Russian in Bialystok. It came very handy. When we were prisoners, I knew how to read. And then I confronted the nachalnik, the man on the head of the camp, to tell him, according to your constitution, we're not supposed to work here. We're supposed to go to school. Rounded up all the people my age, boys and girls. I don't know how many there were of us, but a few. And this is how we went to school in Siberia, a million miles away, with snow over your head if you want to cross the river, because it was all frozen.
You stood up to the camp commandant and enforced the law?
Yeah, well, I just remind him that there is a law. I didn't know anything about it. I knew nothing about it. It just happened. I happened to be lucky, and there was a bunch of us, and we were going to school, which it means we were away from the forest and in school. And I don't know what time of the year it was. I know it may have been Christmas. I'm not sure. We were off from school. That means we went from one, I don't have to tell you, snow was above our head. And I'm not exaggerating when I'm telling you that. And we were coming home, and like I said, the river was frozen. And you know, I'm a little shorty. So I couldn't make it across because the snow would have been above my head. So one of the guys, don't ask me who it was, put me on his shoulders, and we went across the river. And so when I came back to the barracks where we lived, I found out about this little boy that was so sick, and there was absolutely no medical help at all. What do? I got a wagon, put the baby on it. Oh, by the way, before I do this, I must tell you, when I was a lumberjack and cutting trees, we had a lot of camps all around us, and it was mostly political. So there was one of the prisoners gave me a head mask for the mosquitoes. Don't ask me, I think so. And he said, if you ever need help, this is where we are. And there is always medical help. And so I remember that. So when I took the little boy on the wagon, and we go through the gate, and who do I see but the big macher from our camp, right at me. What are you doing here? I says, this little boy is sick. He says, come see me after you get back. Well, unfortunately, the little boy didn't make it. And when I went back, I went to the nachalnik, and the first thing he did, you're not supposed to do this. You're not going back to school, you're going back being a lumberjack. Took my shoes away, and this was the story.
He took your shoes away? Didn't you say the snow was up to your head, so you were walking without shoes in the snow?
Well, I'm telling you about the snow over my head is when we were crossing the river from school going back to the barracks. This is where the snow was, an accumulation. It was impossible.
Do you remember leaving Siberia?
Yeah, I remember we went to work, then word spread very fast that the war is almost over and that we are free. They had no right to keep us as prisoners. We free people, and they cannot force us to work wherever. And well, everyone was overjoyed. And from a distance, I remember hearing a train whistle. Oh, and it was something you were longing for. And I don't know how we got there, but everyone that did anything packed up and zoomed out of the jungle. And the big Maher tried to stop us and offered to pay us for the work that we would be doing. Now, I don't have to ask you. We were overjoyed to run away from there. And we all went into different areas. Some people went to Tashkent, all the way into Asia. You know we wanted to warm up, huh? And we did.
Yeah, but quite a difference from Siberia to Asia. During all of this time, did you have any idea what had happened to Mom and your siblings?
To be honest, I thought about it and wondered because, no, we had no news, no way to find out anything. And after the war, when I found out that my wonderful family, they lived almost till the war was over. It is so unfair. And well, I don't know, the war was over, I think in May. In my family, they closed the ghettos all over Europe in order to get rid of the traces that created with the murders and all that kind of stuff. And my family was forced out the ghetto. They were in the ghetto from the very beginning to the very end. And so my mother and I had one sister older than I was a year, one sister young, two sisters younger, and then my mother had the twins. So she had to cope with all that all by herself. How she did it, I don't know. But she did what the law says. Though my sister told me that. She says my mother did not want to leave the ghetto because she had hiding places. But there was my grandma and all the family. Anyway, she did not stay and hide the way she felt she wanted to do, and wind up in Auschwitz. And when they all came to Auschwitz, they had a guy directing right or left. Young people were to the right, all the people and children were to the left or vice versa. And of course, my mother was only in her 30s, and she was rather attractive. Not that it matters. She wanted her children with her, and it wouldn't happen. So finally the German says, go, and pushed her over to the side where my little brother and sister were. And from there, I don't have to tell you what happened. And my poor mother would not relinquish her twins. She wanted them right where she was. It didn't happen, so she went with them. And this was the end of my family. Of course, it's too much to talk about.
Again, as I told you before we started this, I think it's extremely brave that you are willing to share all this. It's not easy to tell, it's not easy to hear. At the end of the war, your mom and the twins had perished, but your sisters had lived, and they were on the death march, as we call it. You told me a horrific story. The sister, Irene, right? Tell us her story.
Yeah, that was my youngest sister. She wound up in the ghetto with my other sisters and everybody else, including. Then Hitler decided he wanted to cover all his traces because the war was almost over. So he emptied all, I call them death chambers, into the street. And he sent them all on a dead march, so to speak, because some of them were skeletons. They couldn't even walk. The only way they walked is lifting one foot after another, which my sister has done too. And they came to a certain destination. You can imagine it's February on the Baltic Ocean. I don't have to tell you more. Very cold. People with no clothes, no food, nothing like that. And they marched. And ever so often, I can tell you that because my little sister, who was younger than I was, lived through it. And this is how I know details like the one I'm telling you. So they marched them till they couldn't go no more. And as they were falling down, boop, boop, and out into the ocean. When it came to my sister, they stopped. And the Germans put them down, I don't know why, like pyramids, 1, 2, 2, and 1. And with the machine gun, this what happened. My sister woke up in a pitch dark place with both of my sisters covering her. And they had blood going through their faces. And there's my sister. What does she do? That she was looking for a German to finish her off, but there was none around. So from a distance, she saw a light. And she wanted to go to that light. She had no energy or strength. She was a skeleton to start off with. So little by little, she raised one leg after the other, and she got to the destination. And when she gets over there, 2 German women opened the door. When I'm telling you that, it looks like it's around the corner. It must have taken her all night to get there, I don't know. And she doesn't know. So one of the German women looked, you see that? She's a Jew, let's finish her off. The other one says, no. She's going to be our passport out of here, because they were this was Germany. And all these people, my sister, it was Germany that she went to that house.
So they decided to allow her to live.
Well, they took her in, one convinced the other one, into the basement, and slowly but surely they brought her back, so to speak, you know. And 3 months after this, because this was February, and in May the war was over, she was the passport for them to get out, because, you know, if you were German and the Russian, it wasn't easy for them at the time. So that is the story of my wonderful family.
So she's in Germany and you're in Asia and the war ends. How did you find her?
That's another story without any communication. I don't know, I don't remember, but as I said, they had names everywhere you look. So-and-so is looking for so-and-so. I don't remember, but I remember when I saw my sister, I didn't know who she was, and she didn't know who I was, because we were kids when the war, you know, and now we were growing teenagers. And I had a baby. Yeah.
You had a baby?
Yeah.
And we kind of missed that part.
Oh, no. Oh,
I thought you said it wasn't like it is now. Where did you meet your husband?
Oh, in one of these electronic camps, I think they were building. I think it may have been, Germany. I don't remember. No, couldn't have been Germany. I really don't remember. It was an electronic plant to deliver lights everywhere.
You had a baby, you had a husband, you had a sister to find. What happened to Dad?
Oh, well, she lived entirely in a different part of the world, and we didn't meet till the war was almost over.
Yeah.
On the road. And my father, he was there also. You know, everybody was trying to save themselves.
Someone wants to know, have you been back to Poland?
I have been back to Europe time and time again. I did not want to go back to Poland. I didn't want to see the ghetto. I didn't want to see if I find an item that I could connect. I didn't want to do that, and so I didn't. No, I've been back to Europe many times, but not Poland.
Somebody else would like to ask, what signs were there that it was the last straw for the Polish Jews who decided to leave before it was too late? So people who decided to leave Lodz before the Nazis got there.
I had my girlfriend that I left Poland originally, did survive the war, wind up in France, until we all were in different places. And she survived, and yeah, I was in touch with her.
Oh, you were in touch with her after?
Yeah. She lived in America, as you know, good old America.
That was the next question someone wants to ask you. What's it like to immigrate to the U.S. and live your life after living through so much horror?
Well, I don't know where to start. I really don't. It's a new world, a new language, new environment, new people. It's after the war, things are available. I really never looked at anything so deeply. It was just like minute to minute and day to day. We had a hard time because, you know, when we came to the barracks in Germany, that's after the war. And it used to be a concentration camp because they still had the crematoriums over there. This where they housed us before we could come to the USA. And I don't know why, because my family, my husband's family are all from New Orleans, and we had a hard time getting anywhere. So we wound up in a DP camp where we should have been in the United States, but we didn't. So it was tough. My son got sick in the barracks. I don't know, I think he had diphtheria, and I didn't have a mom that I needed so badly to help me, to tell me, to show me. I didn't have that. But my son had diphtheria, and you know, now you know I'm a rebel. They had a doctor, I don't know how far. I got on my feet and I didn't go there, I flew over there. I got the doctor out the house. I says, my child, my son really had diphtheria, and she would have not given him the shot, whatever it was. He would have not survived, but he did. All kinds of unpleasant experiences. I hate to share them with you, but I'm glad that you're interested in hearing some of it.
And yet, you seem, again, regardless of your history, just to be 95 and so full of life and so healthy, it amazes us. But the fact that it's not just that you lived a great life and you're 95, you lived through horror and you're 95, and you seem not to be bitter, not to be angry. But
well, you know, the people up there, I've got so many of them, they all watch over me. That's all I can tell you. I don't know, it's just some genes you inherit. And I was really lucky my sons and hopefully my grandchildren inherit that. It's just me. It's not a life of luxury. Though I've lived luxuriously at one time. But like I said, I don't know. It's God's will.
We talked about this at lunch, about how you feel about people who hate. And you would think in the aftermath of what you went through, you would have permission from God to hate, but you don't choose to hate.
I do not. I do not have any hate. I think when you hate someone, you harm yourself. Because how do you get rid of hate? Why would you hate anyone if you cannot change them or make it better all around? Why? It doesn't give you anything. It just gives you anxiety and hurt. And I am avoiding that all my life. This is why I'm running from place to place. So here I am, and I parked myself right in Milwaukee.